See, I have worked for the California community colleges for almost 20 years in some. Um, I used to be a full-time tenured counselor and I decided to switch careers and teach psychology instead of counseling. So I'm now a part-time psychology faculty and I have been for the last 7 years. And I currently am faculty at Saddleback, Mount Sac, Solano, Lake Tahoe, Santa Ana, Chaffey, and CSU Monterey Bay. And I teach all online classes. I teach 12 to 16 a semester. And then I usually teach one in-person class for one of the community colleges. I also teach in University of Laverne's Master's in Counseling program for their marriage and family therapists. And my passion has been online instruction. But prior to COVID, I had no experience in online instruction at all. And with COVID, as we all were, required to learn it the best way we could. And so I've devoted the last 6 or 7 years to learning the ins and outs of quality, poker aligned, accessible online course creation. So today, what I plan on doing is going over with you the importance of accessibility in course design for online courses, especially with Title II kind of looming over us for the next year. So I'm hoping this will be helpful to you all. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to go to slideshow mode. Okay. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about just briefly, because a lot of this we already know, is the importance of accessibility. So why are we having to do this? Accessibility is vital in leveling the playing ground for an assortment of students, representative of an assortment of orientations, but not necessarily just including demographic variables, but also including things like ability statuses and learning styles, because all of our students learn very differently. Accessibility unites student and faculty in learning and engaging. It provides an opportunity for faculty to uniquely bond with students over the course content of which they're teaching. Let me just move this out of the way. To me, accessibility means that everyone has an equal opportunity for the attainment of success. And I know that, it's different to guarantee success, and that's not what accessibility does. Accessibility says that we are going to create a space for everyone to have the opportunity to succeed, but we can't necessarily assure their success. Okay. One of the primary theoretical orientations that I've adhered to over 20 years, I learned this in grad school, was the mattering versus marginality theory by Nancy Schlossberg. And she basically indicated that college students will succeed based on their level of participation and their feeling of inclusiveness. And back in 1989 is when she wrote this theory. So it's a pretty sound theory, and it's absolutely still applicable today. Whereas if students feel marginalized or that they're not getting the content or they don't have equal access to the content, they are far less likely to actually succeed in the course. So I kind of always keep this theory in the back of my mind when I'm designing my courses. Okay, so now we're going to get to kind of the meat and potatoes of accessibility. Okay, so accessibility in Canvas, I'm going to assume, and so you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but is our LMS all Canvas, or is somebody using anything different? Okay, okay, good. So creating accessible courses can be daunting and overwhelming. However, we have so many resources to help. One thing I do at Saddleback College is I teach an 8-week course to faculty on creating accessible courses, and they're able to earn a stipend for the completion of that course. And one of the major concerns that I hear from faculty in the beginning of the course is, this is so overwhelming, I don't know where to start. Okay. And while I completely empathize with that, what I have found helpful is to kind of chunk what we need to do into stages. I don't know what this is. Okay, let me just get it. So that it's more digestible. Our students are more likely to learn that way, and we tend to be less overwhelmed if we can kind of work on component parts. So when I create Canvas, I think of it kind of as a puzzle where I design a particular part of my Canvas shell, and I do that for all 16 modules, and then I move on to the next thing that I want in all of my modules, and I just create it linearly. Part of that is the way my brain works. Other people aren't quite as linear, and they rather design one entire module and then move on to the other. That's completely up to you. We just need to make sure that everything that you have in your modules and on your Canvas page is 100% accessible. Okay, so let's see here. I'll move this here. So the first step to creating a accessible Canvas course is to kind of get an overall health score of your class. And there's a variety of ways we can do that. Most districts will adhere to Ally and Pope Tech as the major tools that we will use to determine how accessible our course is. But ultimately, we're going to look at it very holistically and then narrow it down. So these are some of the questions that I would ask myself in determining whether I have an accessible course. Do I have a friendly homepage and is it set up? Do I have consistent and comprehensive modules? Do I have instructions on assignments and how I want my students to engage with content that may not be assignment affiliated? So if I have lecture videos, if I have things I want them to look at, do I also have instructions on that page that indicates to them how I'd like them to engage in with the content? Do I include descriptive criteria and or rubrics? Have I fully captioned all of my videos and or chosen videos with captions? Do I use appropriate leveled headings? Do I have alt text on all of my images? And then most importantly, if I were a student in my course, would I hilariously engage with and navigate my Canvas shell successfully? One of the things that I do for another district is I look at faculty's Canvas shells because they have a requirement that they must meet a rubric to now teach online beginning next year. And I'm one of the evaluators. And one of the things that I see lacking on Canvas shells is, where do you start? Okay, so on your homepage, when a person reads your bio, that's wonderful. But now what's the next step? Do you have a start here button? Do you have a nice orientation and introduction module, I'm hoping, where you kind of highlight important policies, things on technical assistance and technological access and all of those types of things? Where should a student start? Okay. Utilizing district-wide accessibility tools. So become familiar with your district embedded tools in Canvas is what I would recommend. Now, again, the two primary right now are Pope Tech and Ally. Ally is more big picture. It kind of looks at your course holistically and determines how healthy your course is from an accessibility vantage point. Pope Tech, I tend to love because it's very specific. It actually identifies your errors. So what I recommend to faculty is, before you publish a page in Canvas, please click on your little Pope Tech icon and first correct all of the errors, the accessibility errors, so that your Ally score will stay nice and high and your overall Pope Tech score will stay high, because districts are indeed looking at those. So that's just kind of a standard that I indicate is very helpful if we just are using Pope Tech on every page that we're publishing in Canvas and correcting those accessibility errors right then and there. And then, of course, reaching out to your faculty DE centers to see what other resources they have. At Saddleback, we have a fantastic faculty center who helps us with all of these things. And on all of my other campuses, we have something very equivalent. I would recommend you making contact with that particular division or office and say, What types of accessibility measures do we have, and what can I do to ensure that the content I am creating is indeed accessible? Okay, any questions on any of that before I move on to the syllabus? Okay, perfect. So creating an accessible syllabus. Think of your syllabus. I always like to think of it as an invitation to students to join me for the purpose of a semester. And we want to share our passion within that syllabus. The syllabus is tricky because there's a lot of pivotal content that we can't get away from. We have to have a course description. We have to have learning outcomes and a course calendar and how we're weighting grades and all of those types of things that aren't necessarily that interesting to a student. But there are things that we can employ to increase student buy-in when viewing the syllabus. Does anyone want to share what they do in creating a syllabus to kind of engage students? If not, I can. Okay, no problem.
I
Oh,
can
go ahead.
go. So first of all, I definitely use visuals because I know that a lot of text will be a little bit,
Yeah,
distracting. So that's one of the things I do. And I try to use headings,
yes, ma'am.
bolded headings. Yeah, that's all I remember for now.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And those are great, not only great in capturing students and maintaining their attention, but those are great accessibility factors. Okay, so to have an accessible syllabus, we must have headings. Okay, we cannot have endless narrative. We must have chunked information. Okay, so we don't want to just continue with narrative. We do need to have those headings. One thing that I do is I use a lot of imagery. And I can share with you on another slide, I believe, a great place for accessible representative imagery that is fantastic and it meets all accessibility requirements. No contrast issues or anything. And that's predominantly where I find every image that I put in my syllabus. Um, okay, so we talked about headings. This is my website. Well, not my website, but the website I use, Getty Image Collection. Lean In. I love, love, love this website because you can literally type in anything in the search bar and they will populate images representative of our diverse student body. And again, no contrast issues, no errors in accessibility. The only thing we have to do is copy them, paste them on our Canvas page, and add an alternate descriptor. It's a wonderful resource. I've never gone outside of here to find an image in my psychology courses. Okay. Okay, so components of a syllabus. Like I said, while many things are mandatory, there are some things we can add to kind of humanize the experience for a student. Okay. One thing I always do is include these following statements. So I will write a diversity and equity statement and I put it in my syllabus. And I also include a connection and belonging statement. And I label it, everyone belongs in Professor Curasi's class. And then I write to them what that looks like in an online interface. And I basically invite them to join me. So those things, while we might think are trivial compared to, all of the content heavy items that we must include, those are the types of things that actually stand out to students. Okay, that we took the time to introduce ourselves, that we recognize we're teaching a diverse group of students, and that we want them to feel like they belong because they do. Okay, so within the syllabus, aside from a diversity statement, which is highly advisable, and a connection and belonging statement, again, highly advisable, these are things we definitely want in the syllabus to make it accessible. We want to have a communication plan or policy. Okay, and that's another thing that I'm learning by going through other people's Canvas and evaluating them, is that that's missing in a communication plan. We don't want to just put our contact information and say, hey, contact me anytime. It needs to be more structured. We need to say, these are the ways in which you're going to contact me. This is my response time. these are the ways in which I will provide feedback to you in my response time. And those types of very structured pieces of information regarding how we are going to communicate with students and meet those RSI requirements. The communication plan is pivotal in indicating how we're going to meet regular and substantive interaction with our students. Technical assistance is always something we want to have because we're teaching online. And we want students to know what to do if Canvas acts up or there's some sort of debacle. So we want to have a page, or I mean, in our orientation module or on our syllabus about where I go if technology fails. Another one is access, technological access. So some of my students actually have admitted that they're trying to complete my course on their phone solely. Okay, which to me would be very, very hard. I'm not that adept at using a phone to be doing that. Now, most of them are. However, we want them to know that if it's a matter of you not being able to secure a computer, our campuses can help you with that. Most campuses in our system have a laptop loaner program. I know all the ones I teach for do. It's, yeah, it's first come, first serve, but we should tell them, hey, there are resources out there. And you don't have to, complete it on your phone if you don't want to. Campus support services and resources is another thing we really should have in our syllabus. So, kind of thinking outside of our class, yes, the tutoring services are always important, the writing center, the math center, etc. But what about those great student services that we all offer? Do they know what EOPS is? Do they know what disability services is? That's an absolutely required one to be in the syllabus. Do they, know what the TRIO program and learning communities are, etc. So we do want to highlight those for them. And last but not least, of course, we'll have our contact information. So those are really good things to have in your syllabus. And I know that if we're screening for accessibility, we do look at these. Okay, any questions on syllabus creation before I move on to pages? Okay. So this one, well, we'll start here. So it's really important when we build our modules that we have two pivotal pages, a module introductory and a module summary page. Okay, a student needs to know where they start on a unit level basis and where they're done. Okay, that needs to be abundantly clear to them. So on the first page, the introduction, this is where you're saying, welcome to module 3. We are going to be examining whatever. And then you're actually going to create unit level outcomes. By the end of this module, or by the completion of this module, students should be able to do the following. Okay. Then we talk about what they're going to do in the module. So yes, this is what they're going to learn. Now, what are they expected to do in the module? Okay. I have Bloom's taxonomy here because when we write our unit level outcomes, we always are encouraged to use these action types of verbs that are more measurable. And we are discouraged to use verbs like do and complete and those types of things. Okay, so this is kind of a really nice chart of what some of those verbs might include when devising unit level outcomes. And then your closing pages, your summary pages indicate, congratulations on completing the module. If you need anything, here's my email and here's the link to tutoring services. And that kind of indicates to them, okay, we're done with the module. Okay. Okay, so PDFs. I know that PDFs are hard to give up. A lot of faculty have indicated that they are just not going to give up their PDFs, and I'm not the PDF police, but I will tell you when we start looking at Canvas shell accessibility, this is one of the first things that takes your score way down. Okay. If this is anywhere in your course, it's going to move your Pope Tech and your Ally score down, which is a problem for the district. Okay, so PDFs are great in that they include a wide range of information. However, we need to make sure they're accessible because the mass majority of PDFs are absolutely not accessible. This past week, I was reviewing courses and I saw some of the PDFs and they had overlaying content and the charts weren't accessible and I had to put my glasses on to see what was even being illustrated. And I thought, yeah, we got to get all these out of your course. Okay. So the best way to make a PDF accessible is to copy it and paste it into a Canvas HTML page. And then you correct the errors manually. Is it a lot of labor? It absolutely is. Okay. But it's unfortunately absolutely required that we have these accessible materials. Okay. One thing that I know that Saddleback has got for us is this Play Lab robot where they give us a link and we can write an instruction that says, please create or please transform this into an accessible document. And they will do all the heavy lifting. And then we just have to paste that new content into our Canvas page and correct. Okay. But we don't want one of the major things we don't want to do, and I keep seeing this in my evaluations, is having our syllabus as a PDF in Canvas. Our syllabus should be a live document in Canvas, okay? And really, as much of our content as possible should be on these pages. One of the issues with PDFs is that they also contain images, and the images are absolutely not alt text. They can't be. Okay. And the only way in which we can test if content is accessible is by having it as a page in Canvas. So we can't even test the accessibility of a PDF. It's impossible until we put it in that HTML and click on Pope Tech. Okay, so I think that's what I just talked about. Before I move on to PowerPoints, does anybody have any questions about PDFs or creating accessible pages? Okay. So PowerPoints. One of the issues I've had historically with PowerPoints when I used to use pay for textbooks, now I'm 100% ZTC and OER. But when I was using, Cengage or Macmillan or I don't know, Pearson especially, the slides were not accessible. So I'd have to figure out how I'm going to reformat them, which was no easy task. Now these publishers are doing a far better job of making these documents accessible for us, but we do have to do a once over and make sure that they are entirely accessible when we upload them to our Canvas shells. And then of course, if we create our own PowerPoints, we want to make sure that they're 100% accessible. So features associated with accessible PowerPoints are readability. So we don't want our content shrinking because we're adding so much content to the slide. We want the font to be nice and large. We want the colors that we're choosing to meet color contrast accessibility standards. We want to make sure any photo or image that we put on our slide has alt text, and you can absolutely do that through PowerPoint, but we need to make sure those are there. And we have to look at font size and the clarity. So using things like Lucinda calligraphy is probably not a great idea on a PowerPoint when, some students aren't familiar with cursive at all. Okay, so those types of major things. The other thing when creating accessible slides is to use that automated bullet point feature as much as humanly possible. Again, we want to chunk content in a way that is digestible to students, and bullet points really, really do the trick. Okay, any questions about PowerPoints? All right, moving on to imagery and videos, and this one gets challenging with the video part, but I'm going to try and be as helpful as I can. So when we're looking at imagery, in our Canvas courses, we must have an alt descriptor for every image we use. Even if it's sitting in our files, that's still bringing our accessibility score down if it is lacking in alt descriptor. So sometimes I'll get the question of, well, Gina, why can't I just mark all of my images as decorative? Okay. You can't do that because most images that we choose to put in our course have meaning behind them. You would only use the decorative tag if it was simply aesthetic and there was no meaning being conveyed by that image. Okay. But for instance, in my syllabus, if I'm talking about belonging and communicate or belonging and or connection and belonging, and I have an image of people, kind of standing in a circle, feeling warm and fuzzy, I can't just not put a alt tag on that and say that that's decorative. It's not. It's actually conveying what I'm saying in writing. And for students to be able to enjoy that imagery who are visually impaired, it's important that they're able to see that alt tag. Okay. So those are really, really important. Now, videos, I don't know how you guys use videos, and maybe at the end of the presentation we can talk more about this, but I do my own lecture videos, okay? So I'll film myself, and then I will put that on YouTube. I'll get the captions, I'll correct the captions, etc. All videos that we put on, whether they're by us or by somebody else, must absolutely have human generated captions. Okay. So I was at Saddleback this weekend working on something, and one of the faculty asked, well, I really want to use this video, but there was no CC on the video for closed captions. And I said, well, we can't put that in the Canvas show if there's no captions. We have to find something more similar, okay, that does have captions. So that is super duper important. And again, if we are creating our own videos and putting content out there, they all have to be captioned, okay, in order to be considered accessible. Any questions about videos or images? Wonderful. So now let's talk about building our modules. Okay, so like I kind of alluded to in the beginning of the presentation, all of us do this very differently. I'm a very linear thinker, so I like to, do one thing and then the next. So what I usually do when I'm, have a new course that I'm not necessarily copying content from or using a file export for is I'll say, okay, I'm going to do all my module introductions today. And then I'll knock all of those out, units 1 through 16. And then I'm going to do all my module completions. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to put all the PowerPoints in each module and all my lecture videos in each module. And last but not least, I'm going to put all of the assignments in the respective module and I'm done. Okay, it's a lot of like plug-in type of work. So if you are left brain dominant, this is a characteristic that you could absolutely capitalize on. Whereas if you're not, you have the creativity to, build your modules at any way you like. We just have to make sure that they're standardized. And by doing it the way in which I described, it helps to standardize. Because one thing we look at when looking at accessibility is, are all of your modules the same? Okay, and they should be. Okay, so we talked about this. A PowerPoint possibly. You definitely want to have a module introduction. If you have a lecture video or some other video, your 2-unit level assignments. And then I always include this, and I know it's more in alignment with poker than anything else, but optional resources for advanced and remedial learning is a great page that I put behind my module summary page. And this is where I say, here's a couple of videos or things you can look at if you want to learn more about this topic. And here's some resources if you need help understanding more about this topic. Okay, so That's what I kind of discussed. And then, summation, we are here to meet our students' needs. They look up to us for advisement, direction, and validation. And we really can create such wonderful experiences for them online. When online instruction begun, and I'm too old there was no online instruction when I was a college student, but it was a lot of students when I was a counselor, they'd come in saying, I cannot take anything online. It is just too hard. I'm going to have to sit in the classroom. We have made some real progress and stride in creating classes whereby students could actually be successful. And we're just kind of capitalizing on this and meeting those standards that we have in terms of accessibility. Now, I've been talking a lot. Do people have questions for me about anything as it relates to course creation, Canvas, accessibility, etc.? Anybody have anything to share that's unique about where they're at and what their schools are doing to kind of capture accessibility and making the most out of equitable learning experiences? Yeah, Dita?
If nobody has a question, I would like to ask, maybe you will address this at the very end, but do you think, because what you're saying, explaining is kind of like, as you said, it's taking a lot of time, right, to make something accessible, especially PDF.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the role of AI making things accessible? Do you think we can use them, or it's AI is not ready for it yet? What do you think?
I think there is some AI that is out there, like the Play Lab robot that Saddleback purchased, that is AI based, but a lot of it is not there yet in terms of making these things accessible. They've gotten better. Like if you were to open Chat GPT and paste a PDF in there and ask them to, recreate it in an accessible fashion, they're, trying, but I wouldn't recommend them as a go-to. That's a great question.
Thank you. It's
I would
really good
really
to know.
recommend the Pope Tech as your guide. If you create a page and there are issues, Pope Tech will find them. They'll identify them for you. And yes, you do have to manually correct them. But that's probably the best we've got at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if one day we're all talking about, an AI that makes everything accessible. Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay. One last thing I always want to recommend is that you have an orientation module, and you don't just start with your content. In the spirit of making things accessible and clear for students, we want to have an orientation module that says, here are the important things related to this class. Here's a reiteration of our learning objectives. And here are the important policies that I just want to focus on. And right now, one of my most important policies, as I'm sure it is for you, is academic integrity and the use of AI. Okay. As we know, that is a consistent dilemma that we're faced with. And it's important that we have a policy surrounding that. Okay. And that we have that located in our Canvas shell. Anybody else have any questions or anything they'd like to add? The last
Gina,
thing I want to
I was
go
gonna
ahead.
say,
I'm sorry,
no,
Dr.
no, I
Adrian.
was gonna say, I think you have a shy group, but I was gonna say we still have 10 more minutes left.
Okay.
And so if you have more material,
Yeah,
we'll
could
give
I
time
show
for
you
that.
a
Yeah.
demonstration of one of my shells?
Oh, sure. That would be awesome.
Okay. Okay. And here are all of my email addresses, a representative of all the colleges that I'm at, and that's my phone number as well. Feel free to call or text anytime wherever you're working. I'm really good at helping anyone from any college. So please feel free to do that. So with that said, I'm going to end the PowerPoint piece and I'm going to pull up one of my courses to kind of give you an idea of, hey, this is what I mean by a module. And let's see. This I need to get out of. This I need to get out of. Oh, so many windows. Oh my God. Okay, so let's see here. If I've got come on, come on. God, so many things. Okay. And then our lovely MFA. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. So I can show you maybe my abnormal psychology class that I'm teaching. Wait for that to come up. Okay. So here's an example of my homepage, introduction and welcome, ready to begin the course. Okay. Give you an idea of what my syllabus looks like with the imagery and stuff, which kind of helps to break down the narrative. Okay. And these are all those photos from that website I showed you. They're awesome. Okay. And then most importantly, if I went to my modules page, here's my syllabus and orientation module. Okay, so welcome to the class, about your instructor, important dates to remember. I just put the calendar on there with my optional Zoom schedule. I can give you an idea of what that communication plan looks like. Okay. What else should I show you in this module? Commitment to diversity and inclusion. Again, everybody belongs. And then, of course, the course overview and so forth. Course materials, academic integrity, accommodations for disabilities and learning differences. These are all things we absolutely want to highlight. Technology access, technical assistance, and then academic support. What are those support things that we have on our campuses that could aid a student? Okay. So just to give you a general idea of, what a typical module looks like, there's my overview, there's my completion, there's my optional, and I'll show you these, my lecture video, my PowerPoint, my discussion, and my assignments. So let me go back out. So if I looked at module 1, this is what my overview looks like, what you'll learn, what you'll do, and then what corresponding ZTC or OER they're going to be reading, and then what my lecture video will be going over and what their responsibility for content discussed in the lecture video includes, and then my PowerPoint, my discussion, and see how there's descriptive criteria here. Really important that we have that on our assignments and or with the accompany of rubrics, and then their assignments for the unit. And hey, congratulations, you're done with module 1. And here are some optional resources if you want to learn more about a particular topic. And here's our tutoring center for tutoring support. Okay. I can show you real quick an example of a paper where I have a rubric and a descriptive criteria. So if I clicked on PsychoFarm, I would have the instructions, right? Here's all of my descriptive criteria. And then here's even a rubric so they know exactly what they're going to be graded on. Okay. That's also a really big issue when we talk about accessibility. Anyone have any questions? No? Okay. Well, make sure you keep my contact information on my I think on my workshop today. There were some things I wanted to share with you that I created, like a mini guide on accessibility for faculty, some tips in creating accessible Canvas shells, and this PowerPoint. So all 3 of those files should absolutely be accessible to you to refer to. And I really appreciate y'all coming.
Thank you so much, Gina.
Oh, you're
Thank
welcome. Thank you
you.
for having me.
And this was the last session, everyone. So thank you for still being around, hanging in there. And I see some faces who have been here since morning session. So we really appreciate
Wow.
that. Um, Tomorrow we're gonna start again very early. So, and please come back for our keynote speakers tomorrow because we are going to have a keynote session at 9 a.m. And Dr. Thomas Tobin will be with us as a keynote speaker. So it's going to be at 9 a.m. But if you want to log in before that, we have another session at 8 a.m. as well. So we look forward to seeing you then. Hopefully you will have a nice and restful evening, and hopefully you will have take a break before tomorrow's session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, ladies, for allowing me to do this.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We,
yeah.
we are,
My pleasure.
and all the things you shared, Gina, they are really super important. So thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
As you said, we hope it's not going to take that much time in the future, right?
Yes. Yes, you got
Definitely.
it. Well, thank you and enjoy your evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Oh, bye-bye. I'll stop my share. Let's see here. Stop share. And then